Hi, this is Eric Bourne with Harrisburg Area Community College, and I'm here to talk with you today about another citation topic. Today we're going to dive into in-text citation according to the MLA citation format, looking at what happens in the middle of your essay as you are bringing in research. As a brief reminder, let's overview what we're talking about. And citation is the process of telling your reader where the words and ideas in your essay came from. Most of the time, that's easy. The ideas and words are yours, and we tell our reader that they're ours by our name at the top of the page. However, we need to worry about citation when we're bringing in other people's words and ideas. And that's where we need to very carefully give them credit. Now, some steps in this citation process happen in text. Right in the body of your essay, right there as you're writing your sentences. And those are what we're going to focus on today. Now, just to be clear, some steps do happen on a separate page at the end of your document, what we call the Works Cited page. Now, all these steps work together. You can't just do the in-text stuff and skip the Works Cited page. They all work together to properly cite your sources. However, we're just going to focus on these in-text pieces for this particular presentation. So, let's focus on the in-text. What happens? First up, we need to, before we quote, indicate who we're quoting from. We do this, number one, to alert our readers before they get to other people's words or ideas that we're pulling them in from somebody else. It's an issue of clarity to your readers and an issue of respect to your sources. Giving them that credit indicates some measure of respect and gratitude for their work. Secondly, we surround our direct quotations with quotation marks. Remember that there are three kinds of quoting. We can directly quote, where we present somebody's exact words. We can paraphrase, where we present the same idea, but in our own words. Or we can summarize, where we present just the main ideas of a text, but again in our own words. Now, the direct quotations, because they involve somebody else's specific words, require the extra step of using quotation marks. Those clearly indicate to our reader the difference between words that we put together and words we did not. Third, we need something called a parenthetical citation, and it needs to appear immediately after our quotes. Now, don't be scared by this word parenthetical. That's entirely too many syllables to simply indicate that we're putting some information in parentheses. This parentheses appears immediately after our direct quotes and after up to a paragraph of summary and paraphrase. The parenthetical citation tends to be the point in this in-text citation process that causes the most confusion. So we're going to focus from here on about the content of these parenthetical citations. What am I supposed to put in parentheses after I include a quote? Let's note that these parenthetical citations have up to 3 jobs. There are 3 roles that they're meant to play in your essay. The job they always do is that they tell your reader that some quotation of some sort has just occurred. They're a flag. They say, hey, the stuff that was just happening, the stuff that was just said, I'm citing it because it belongs to somebody else. And that's why these citations always need to appear with our quotation. Often, not always, they indicate what source you quoted from. They tell your reader which source on your list of works cited entries should they look in to go and find the quoted material. Third, they often tell your reader where to go and actually find this quoted material inside of the source text. They provide a page number, a paragraph number, a line number. There are some options there. Often you'll see your parenthetical citations providing this information. Usually, the content in the parenthetical citation that accomplishes this is the author's last name and page number. This is somewhat of your gold standard, and usually this is what you put inside of the parenthetical citation. Something like this, for example. Don't muddy up your parenthetical citation with excess punctuation like a comma or the word page or an abbreviation for it. A last name, a space, and then a page number is a very common parenthetical citation. However, there are many, many exceptions to this rule. This is not always what you're going to do. We cannot give you a simple answer of do this in your parenthetical citations every time. You want to get used to the process of looking up what to put in when this basic formula doesn't seem to fit. If you're trying to write a parenthetical citation and you remember author's name, page number, and that doesn't seem to fit for whatever reason, maybe you don't know who the author is, that should not be a moment when you get frustrated and panic and freeze and don't put in a citation. That's a moment where you need to be using the resources available to you. Let's cover a few of these common exceptions. There are others that I'm not going to cover here. They don't occur often enough to warrant being memorized. However, keep in your mind that there always is something to do for your situation. First, let's talk about those times when the source doesn't tell you the author's name. This is a fairly common situation, particularly when you like to get your research off of the general internet. The internet is full of people who like to talk, but most of them are pretty happy to hide behind a fake handle or just not tell you their name at all. This doesn't always invalidate, however, the text that they provided for the internet, and you may still want to use it in your research. In this situation, instead of an author's name, you're going to put in a shortened version of the article's title instead. A shortened version of the most specific title of your source. Now we want to shorten it because we don't want huge long parenthetical citations. They're already an interruption to the flow of our essays. We want them to be brief. So we use the first 1 to 3 words of the title. Generally speaking, just enough to uniquely identify this title amongst the other titles on your works cited page. Put quotation marks around this title so that your reader clearly knows that you're providing them with the title and not an author's name. Another common exception is that we often use sources that aren't paginated. They don't have page numbers. The common format is assuming that you're getting your research from books. And in today's era, that's becoming less and less common. Most students like to get their information from online sources. And while there are many sources that use, say, a PDF format, there are many others that use the simple, good old HTML scroll down web page that isn't divided up into specific page numbers. If your source is in this situation, don't panic. Don't print out your source and then count pages. Don't guess. If this is not a useful bit of information you can provide your reader, then skip this part of the parenthetical citation. The page number part only makes sense for documents which actually have pages. If this isn't helpful, skip it. Do remember that certain kinds of documents have their own rules for the in-text citation. For example, quoting a piece of poetry, it's expected that you do not put a page number, but rather you give a line number. That way, anyone who has any copy of the poem can find what you're quoting, and the line number is a lot more specific anyway. Similarly, if you want to quote a playwright like Shakespeare, you're going to provide, instead of a page number, act, scene, and line number. There are similar standards out there for quoting from Holy Scripture, and a number of other odd examples. The times when you can be more specific than the page number, generally you do look up the format. A final exception that I'm going to note before we dive into an example. If you already mentioned the author's name prior to quoting. Now this should actually be something very common. I indicated that you really want to indicate your source before you start quoting when talking at the start about in-text citation. When you're perfectly clear about who you're quoting, then we don't repeat that information in the parenthetical citation. If you tell me before you quote who the author's name is, then don't repeat it in the parenthetical. Now, if you're bouncing around between sources, if you're coming back to a source after a paragraph or two, make sure that it's clear who the source is. If it's ever unclear who you're quoting from, then you need to put the author's name in the parenthetical citation. As long as you're perfectly clear, however, context matters, then you want to skip the author's name in the parenthetical citation and rely simply on your page number. Now, all of this discussion is moot, however, if you don't have a page number to rely on. You always need to have a parenthetical citation, and it needs to have something in it. So, for example, if you're working with a web source and you know the author's name, even if you mention that author's name prior to your quote from that web source, you're going to put it in again in your parenthetical citation. The rule that you need to have a parenthetical citation is more important than any exception. Alright, folks, let's take a moment to work up an example. I have a news article that I'm going to be quoting from. We're going to write a paragraph together. Alright, here we go. We're looking over here at the left at an article from Forbes.com, a popular news site. And this article is talking about blue-collar hotspots, cities creating the most high-paying working-class jobs. Alright, now this is an article that does tell me the author. His name is Joel Kotkin. But you'll notice that this document does not have separate pages. It is one long page that I'm scrolling down here. The paragraphs are not numbered either. Okay, that's all the information I need here to begin typing. I just go ahead and make this text a little bit larger for those of you reading at home. We're going to start by introducing our source. Joel Kotkin, a writer for Forbes. Discusses in his essay, let's do the word article. Okay. Now this is the type of opening to a sentence to a paragraph that is going to appropriately introduce your source. Indicating an author's name and a title is a very common strategy, and often we might take a moment to indicate to our readers something that establishes the credibility of our source. Something like saying a writer for Forbes helps to establish that this person is writing for a noted and commonly read publication. Okay, now indicating sort of an overall focus, let's find some more specific content to provide for our reader in a direct quote. I'm going to be looking down here in this paragraph right here. I'm interested in this idea that he says the U.S. edge in engineering and manufacturing has sparked investments by domestic and foreign producers. Notice that since I'm presenting Joel Kotkin's exact words, that I'm going to use quotation marks at the front and the start to indicate that I did not write these words. Immediately afterwards, I'm going to put in my parentheses, and they're going to appear before the closing period of the sentence. Now here, my basic information is author and page number. We don't have page number. We're just going to put in the author's last name right here. Now let's say that I want to go on and provide a little bit of summary. He notes that these jobs aren't happening everywhere. They're happening in specific metropolitan areas. Metropolitan, there we go. Let's try that again. Alright. Now, here I am summarizing. I don't need direct quote, because it's not a direct quote. I don't need quotation marks. But I do need a parenthetical citation. I do need to remind my reader that I'm still presenting the ideas of Kotkin. Now, if I'm going to move on to my own perspective, this is a good time to do so. I have just cited this information. I've just indicated to my reader with this parenthetical citation that I'm done summarizing. This is a good moment for me as a writer to include some discussion, some explanation from my own perspective. Now, because that sentence is more of my own ideas here, it's on topic, but these are my thoughts here. This is something that I do not need to cite. Alright folks, I hope that helped you out with in-text citation. I hope that example was helpful for you. And just remember your basics. Remember that you need to make sure that you have these citation elements in. Get those parentheses in, get those works cited entries ready at the end of your essay. Even if you have some errors in what goes into these elements, as long as you have them, you can avoid the concern of plagiarism, and you can get a grade higher than a 0. We all want to get a grade higher than that, so stick to your basics and learn the particulars as you move.